Hello, everyone, Anvilites. I'm Brian Colin, and today we have Artists of Worldbuilding, the very first episode on World Anvil's channel. And as my very first guest, I have the super talented Chris Seaman. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, thank you.
And since this is a new
Thanks for having
series,
me.
yes, since this is a new series, I wanted to kind of tell you all a little bit about what the show is going to contain before we dive into talking to Chris a bit more. Really, what we're going to do is talk with other artists that I've met through conventions and shows about the fantastic worlds that they've created built around their own IPs, which I think is going to be fascinating because I like world building and I like to hear how other people do it as well. So if anybody has any questions during the chat, make sure to throw them in there. I'll try and keep my eyes on it, but since I'm relatively new at this, you may have to say it once or twice just to get my attention. So if you don't know Chris, he has worked for so many amazing properties like Dungeons and Dragons for years, Magic the Gathering, Paizo for Pathfinder, I believe. The list continues on, and he has his amazing own line called Cameo Creeps, which are these. I'll let Chris go into detail on what they are if you want to jump in and talk about Cameo Creeps a bit.
Sure. So the what's interesting about Cameo Creeps from the artist perspective is that I for a while there I was doing a convention called AluxCon, which is in Pennsylvania. It's a collector-based fantasy convention. Some of the great fantasy illustrators, contemporary artists are there. And one of the things that I wanted to kind of show was a small, affordable miniature painting that collectors could snatch up and not break their account and still have money left over to enjoy the rest of the convention. So I did a series of these little miniature paintings. They're about this. They were about this big. Here's kind of one of the reproductions. They all are painted miniature, and I sold them, like all of them, right away. And I was like, okay, well, I'll do another batch. So I did another batch of like 10 or 11 little mini monsters, and they sold right away. And through a series of conversations with other creatives, I decided to open them up to reproductions and print runs. As I'm doing this, I realized that the vision that I have for Cameo Creeps, they're cameos. A cameo, definition of a cameo is anything 5x7, anything that's an oval, anything smaller than 5x7. And what I realized is that I wanted to sell framed prints, basically, is what the concept was. And the frames that I had purchased prior to that, you could only get very limited numbers, and you couldn't get them in consistent formats. So, I was getting like a mahogany with a gold lip, and then I'd get like a white one with a silver lip, and I'm like, I don't really like it. And so I decided to go to Kickstarter in 2016 and fund the project myself. Well, not myself, through backers funding the project. To bring Cameo Creeps to market. My vision is totally, retail ready, a collectible. And so the first series I put out 2 sets of 12. So I released 24 creeps, 24 Cameo Creeps, and they're all different types of monsters. So there's werewolves in there, there's mutants, there's zombies, there's, Dagonian Cthulhu type creatures, there's all kinds of fun monsters. But the thing that I wanted to stress with these characters as I'm painting them is that they belong in a world that is a regal world. It's a noble world. There's, the big frilly Elizabethan collars, and the armor is beautifully ornate. But there's this juxtapose artistically, coming from the artistic standpoint of grotesque and beautiful, and two things together. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the outfits that the characters are in is really what got me when I first saw them. I really loved how that brought them out and really added. I mean, there's so much personality in how you paint the faces of the different characters, but that really grounded them to a world to me.
Right, exactly. And I didn't realize I was doing it. And I didn't realize I was building a world as I'm painting. Like I said, they were kind of an exercise. That, coming from an artistic standpoint, they were more of an exercise in painting miniature, maybe make a couple of sales. That was kind of the concept. And little did I realize that as I'm starting to release the characters, and then we do the Kickstarter, and all of a sudden there's this broader market for what I'm doing, and I'm like, whoa, there's something more here. Something is well, for whatever reason, I painted a ton of stuff for a lot of different IPs. And I still have never hit the kind of selling numbers that I do with Cameo Creeps, even with the Magic stuff or the D&D stuff that I've done, the Paizo stuff, I mean, you name it. It's just, it's so crazy to me that something that, and this has always been a dream of mine, though, too. Now, to go back to the history of kind of my personal journey with creating something. Okay, so there's all different types of artists out in the world.
Sure.
There are artists who are fantastic at taking something that someone else has created and maybe turning the figure and drawing it in a certain way, and they're really great at that. Some artists have to be told what to work on. Some artists have to find inspiration in other ways. For me, I go back to my childhood and discovering worlds. So, of course, Star Wars, right? Like, Star Wars is like the pinnacle of world building that we were all introduced to as children. And I went to go see, I specifically remember my dad and my brothers, we went and saw Return of the Jedi when it was in the theater. And one of the things that, not realizing it as a kid, but I was sucked in immediately because of the realism of what George Lucas and the directors and the art directors and the creatives were doing with what they were putting on film. And of course that snowballed into wanting more fantasy, more science fiction things, and just, comics. Then I took over when I started reading a lot more. So there's always been this kind of underlying observation that I've had of other creative worlds that have been built, where there's this underlying, these characters exist in this spot, but it's the world and the context and the surroundings that are so intriguing and inspire me artistically and creatively.
I think that's really evident, especially in, like, when you first look at the Series 1 and you start to see the names that all of your characters have that tie into the clothing that they're wearing. And even the ones where you pull things from your childhood, when there were, like, the limited edition He-Man inspired pieces and things like that, you definitely can see how that has influenced the world that you're building.
Right, absolutely. And I think that that's something that we probably all have in common as world builders and world creators, is that there's something in us that we have to creatively get out. And I don't know the right terminology for it. I'm sure there's a word somewhere in this giant world about what it means specifically, but there's something in our innate soul that has to get out, and I have to do it. Like I said, I've done a lot of stuff in worlds that I love, like Dungeons and Dragons and Magic and stuff. It's satisfying, and it's financially satisfying, but to share an original concept, an original idea, is, to me, the ultimate artistic and creative expression. So when I discovered Cameo Creeps, totally by accident, it was not planned at all. I'm glad that I had the wisdom to recognize, whoa, this is something that people really like, and how can I satisfy my artistic expression that way? How can I maybe make a little bit of money on the side?
It helps to be able to pay bills.
How can I pay bills? Right. So, that's a whole other topic of artist revenue streams.
So one of the things
But-
that I love about your work, especially when working for other IPs, is seeing the storytelling that you put into each piece when it's not just like a character illustration, but when you're doing a full
Right.
image. I can't wait to see Cameo Creeps and see the different characters interacting in the world that you're creating around them. I think that's going to be fantastic.
That's something that's been really fun to explore. Well, and one of the things that is really exciting about it is that not only am I part of it and the kind of the creator and creative director, but there are other people I'm working with who have brought their own their interests and their artistic creativity to Cameo Creeps that I couldn't do without just on my own.
Sure.
A really good example would be the package design. My brother is a fantastic graphic designer, and so when I approached him and I said, "Hey, would you be interested in designing the packaging and look for Cameo Creeps and the logo and all this?" He said, "Absolutely, I want to just do it for fun, you know." And so he was on board.
Awesome.
So he designs, he designed how we all wanted everything to look, and we have the side there so you can see the creep, all the technical stuff on the back. He designed that. He designed the website. And then I'm working with another creative, Jeff Folkson, GD Folkson, who's a fantastic writer who I've been working with and developing the Creeps world with. It's so amazing because Jeff is one of those talents that you can share a concept or a plot line and say, here's kind of what I think it would be really funny if we had two generals who got, they were on the battlefield in the heat of battle. We have the zombie court over here and the demon court over there, and they're both going to town. They're battling each other, and then all of a sudden a giant monster comes in and scoops them both up with their mouth, and they're in the belly of this beast. Well, how do they resolve those conflicts stuck in the monster's gut?
That's fantastic.
And I can say that to Jeff. That's just an idea. I could tell Jeff that, and then he'll write a story, and he'll write a novella about it.
Awesome.
And so he's able to so it's not only me who's working on this world, it is others who are working on it. And I think that's really important to surround yourself with people who are passionate about the idea. They see a future with it, and that's really cool.
That's really exciting to hear that, because I too, like when Worldbuilding, have another writer and another artist that come on board to help do it. So it's not something that I feel, if you don't want it to take 20 years, it's not something that you can do alone. And there's so much other people can add to it.
It's so important to have those kind of partnerships. And when I met Jeff through the first campaign.
Oh, wonderful.
Was introduced to me through another person and said, you should really partner up with him. He's really fantastic. And I read some of the stuff that he was working on, and he is also a very successful author on his own. No need for me to, I don't know anybody. So, but he's successful on his own. So, for him to come and want to work on stuff is just fantastic. So, we do a lot of Skype sessions and we work back and forth that way, because he's in Connecticut, I'm in Ohio.
Awesome.
And we were able to get together and do Toy Fair together in New York in 2018. We were able to take the Cameo Creeps there and sell them to people. So it was pretty awesome. It's been pretty awesome experience to develop this world. It's slow sometimes. Right, sure. It's slow going, but it's you chip away at it.
Well, now that you have a big cast of characters, especially with the numerous lines that you've come out with so far, can you tell us a bit about the world itself, the setting, maybe something about? You mentioned when you were throwing the concept of the idea of the two different factions going against each other and then getting swallowed up by the beast. Can you tell us a little bit about either the politics of your world, what the setting is like? Touch more on that.
Sure. So one of the things that I'm a big fan of is I love history.
Mm-hmm.
I love English history. I love European history. I love American history, World War histories. And one of the main factors, we go back to talking about the Cameo Creeps and their costuming. That's Elizabethan. That's 13 to 1600, somewhere around there. And kind of the Cameo Creeps world is this post medieval world. So we have an age of enlightenment with these monsters, and in this world, there's the main castle, which is Crepusculum Castle, and the leaders of the world and the main courts of this world do business there. And so there's the Infernum Demon Court, the Legion Mutant Court. The mutants are like the tinkerers, the artisans. They're the creators. They're very neutral.
Okay.
They don't, they're hired guns. If the unhallowed king says, "All right, create me an army," so they'll create an army of Frankenstein monsters sewn together.
Nice.
And all kinds of cool steampunky elements to that faction. And then there's the spectral faction. They're the ghosts. And there's let's see, who else do we have? There's the lycanthropes, the werewolves.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of treated poorly. But overall, we've created 8 different factions. And they all have different characteristics and roles in the world. And another thing too that's interesting that I want to express when it comes to Cameo Creeps is it's not like super serious.
Sure.
There's always kind of meant to be a little bit of a wink to the reader or the audience. That's part of the names are punny. They're meant to be on the nose. And the world is very much like that too. So it's like if you took the Munsters,
mm-hmm.
or maybe the Addams family, and you turned them all into monsters, but then covered the globe with those monsters.
Now this globe,
sorry,
the globe, is it a different reality to our existing world? Is it a completely different world? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a completely different world.
Okay.
So there's no it's permanent midnight.
Mm-hmm.
There's never any daylight. There actually is one portion of there's a small island that's inhabited by the Fae,
mm-hmm.
and they are. I actually just wrote some stuff about them. Finally, figured out what their part in the world is, but they've been banished.
Okay.
And it's the only part in the world that has light on it. And the queen is a baby caterpillar woman who's wise beyond all years. And then in the Empty Kingdom, so on Earth is the world. Empty Kingdom is the province that the Crepusculum Castle is in. And then there's all these other provinces around the Empty Kingdom that are different court or different races and creatures and things.
Mm-hmm.
But in the court right now in the world, it's the unhallowed zombie court has ruled Crepusculum Castle for the last 1,000 years or so. And the first book for the Kickstarter that I'm getting ready to launch
mm-hmm.
Explores and is kind of an introduction to the main players of the world. Here's another little tidbit of Cameo Creeps that's everything's character driven.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm more interested in character and how they interact with each other and how these different courts react to each other versus the setting that they're in,
uh-huh.
if that makes sense. So
sure.
like the novella and the paper doll book that I'm getting ready to release on Kickstarter. They're both character driven.
So you start with the character, and then everything kind of filters down from there, developing all the other pieces that go on from that. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So and as we're getting deeper and deeper into the world or the character building, the world starts to flesh itself out outside of it. So there's, we go, okay, well, we need this character to go here. Okay, well, what's this room in this castle? Oh, okay, well, what about this? What if it's the queen's head she's wearing? Where all the previously decapitated queen's heads are. It's like a sewing circle in there, and they just sit and bitch about the king.
That's fantastic.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
And so there are these things that start to develop as we're growing these characters, and it's just been a real fun journey. And the concept, though, for the novella that Jeff and I wrote is, like I said, kind of an introduction to the world of Cameo Creeps, and all the players. There's sibling rivalries. One brother who's a ghost, part of the ghost court. His twin brother betrayed the ghost faction and is now a demon. So his skull is flaming, and he's like they both hate each other. You find out later that the reasoning behind that, and the reason that they're so frustrated with each other. There's the mistress to the king, who is a demon, Tallulah Ramcoat. She's has two bastard sons, two sons, Heinrich and Frederick, and they both are in kind of line for the throne, which means then a demon court would be on the throne rather than a zombie court.
Is it the Frederick that has the ram horns?
Yep.
Excellent. I have that. I just looked at that on the wall.
Yep. So all these, like I said, all these characters that I'm creating, they all have a backstory. They all have a purpose in the world, and it's just exciting to grow. And I can't wait to share it. I can't wait for the Kickstarter to launch and hopefully, start to get this content in people's hands, because ultimately my goal is to finish our board game.
So before you jump into the board game, can you tell?
Yeah.
Can you tell a little bit? So you mentioned the novella. Is that going to be part of the upcoming Kickstarter, or is
yes?
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm releasing. It's like a content dump of Cameo Creeps world stuff. Okay. So we're releasing the first novella, which is called The Case of the Carnivorous Crown, where you find out more about the hierarchies of, and the bureaucracy and the aristocracy, the leaders of the world, and who they are, and the main players. And then we're releasing the Book of Monster Paper Dolls. And this is more of this is more geared towards the target audience that I've cultivated and the fan base, but it also explores all the different costuming, because the costuming is like a big deal in the world. So it determines status,
Of course, yes.
And so there's a lot of really cool accessories and things that come with the paper doll book. So it's really an art book. Rather doing a field guide book, here's a walkthrough of the Cameo Creeps world. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because there's a ton of beautifully beautiful books out there.
Yep.
I just wanted to take something that's a little more of a play set, and that's my retro, talking about the past of playing with Star Wars toys or whatever. Those are things that I was exposed to as I really want to be able to play with this character, So it's kind of a way of doing, killing all those birds at the same time.
That's fantastic.
However that's saying this. But
I think that's great. I think that's a really fun way to introduce all of the characters and all the different beautiful attire that they're wearing, especially looking at your Facebook page and seeing the little pieces that you've leaked out about it are just really, really fascinating.
Oh, cool, fun. Thank you. Yeah, so there's a lot of really cool like accessories that come with the paper dolls. So there's like severed heads, and there's an Iron Maiden you can all throw your creeps into, and
Awesome.
there's backdrops. Like the first one. The first one we're going to release is the throne room,
Mm-hmm.
and then hopefully if we hit some stretch goals, we can release some more. So they're quadruple panel scenes,
Nice.
like a dungeon master screen, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, so they open up nice and big. So there'll be I'd love to do like a graveyard scene.
Uh-huh.
I would love to do a laboratory scene, and take you to different parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
That one. So there's all kinds of fun stuff. And then on top of that, Jeff is writing the bios for every character. So you get a little, G.I. Joe card on the back,
Nice.
of every character. So it comes with their little stats and their bios and stuff. And then we're going to have call outs for different outfits that were used for, this one was used in the Murder Masquerades Ball of, 1341, whatever, I don't know, something funny.
Fantastic.
But, yeah, so it's really exciting. I'm really excited about the campaign, and I'm hopefully going to launch as soon as I can. But yeah,
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to mention it whenever it does go live. And I believe Clay LaFord is the name. Just picked up one of your Cameo Creeps.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you had mentioned
CameoCreeps.com. Check it out. There's a whole bunch of monsters there. We also have a new line that we just launched, which is the horror icons. So those are kind of the more pop culture centric Cameo Creeps. The original sets are my original monsters, and then we have like Elvira and Vlad the Impaler, and who else do we have up there right now? Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft. So these are all Cameo Creeps that are pop culture friendly. So
right. I assume that they're not going to make it into the world setting, or will they make an appearance there? Yeah.
No, yeah, these are like a separate entity. So there's two lines. So there's the set line and the original set line, and then there's the horror icon line. And those are just like what's interesting. So last year I met Cassandra Peterson, and I actually didn't know it was her. She was at Monsterpalooza and was walking around grabbing business cards, and she didn't have her Elvira stuff on. She just grabbed a card, and her rep came back either that day, I can't remember. Anyway, her rep came back and was like, "Hey, we're really interested in doing an Elvira Cameo Creep. Would that be something you would be interested in doing? Because we really like what you're doing." And I said, absolutely. So let's work out a deal. So we spent last summer, and we worked out a deal, and we were able to launch the first Elvira Cameo Creep. And what that did was it actually opened up the line to another series of miniature painting. And so we're going to do, let's see, right now we have Vlad the Impaler is available for pre-order. And then we're going to do, who else do we have? We have Rasputin coming out, Lady Bathory, Krampus,
Nice,
Jack the Ripper. I want to do an exclusive for C2E2. I want to do H.H. Holmes,
nice,
the murder hotel guy. There's like a series of, and the thing with that is that opening it up that way, it generates funds for people who are more into the pop culture stuff, but it also gets people interested in what I'm doing personally. Right. So it's goes both ways. So
lure them in any way you can, and then once they get hooked on that, they'll be hooked on your Cameo Creeps.
Right. Yeah, and I've seen that happen, and which is still, it blows me away. Like when you said someone just purchased something from the website, I'm like, what? That's amazing. Like, I still get a kick out of the fact that people buy my stuff, and that's amazing.
It's pretty awesome.
They like it enough to spend their money on it, and that's super cool.
Totally. So you were about to say something about the board game. Can you tell us how the board game fits into the world? And I've seen some of the photos, and actually the photo that was up for this that we've posted on social media has some of the prototypes of the ones from the Paper Doll series, I believe. I don't.
Yeah.
Those are from that. But can you talk a little bit
Yes.
about the board game?
Yeah, so the board game is really, really fun. So it's all about first you build your court.
Mm-hmm.
So you pick a court. So you're the spectral court or the ghost or the demon court or the legions of mutant court or whatever. And each court has a court ability. And what you do is it's a tile-based game. So you build the castle that changes every time you build it.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain rooms that are specifically have to be laid down first. These are the first rooms that make this thing. And then what you do is the concept of the game is all about court intrigue and executions. So
Fantastic.
You start a rumor on a court. You sling insults at each other. You duel it out. And then when you hit either 0 health or 0 honor in your court, you go to the dungeon and you wait execution. And at the end of a game turn, all the creeps that are in the dungeon, they go to the executioner's chamber and they read their famous last words. Now, your rumors, the insults, and your famous last words all have points to them. It's called panache.
Mm-hmm.
So the verve, the vigor of how well you deliver your final words or how well you deliver your insults to your opponent all have points. And the way you win is whoever has the most points of panache. So you can double down on insults,
Mm-hmm.
be like, oh, I'm going to kick your butt, I hate you, and you smell like pus, or something. And that's, you just sling insults at each other. But at the end of the game round, you tally up how many panache points you have. So even in death, you still can win.
Of course.
Which is kind of the point of a creep. Like, death is irrelevant, so you can technically keep playing the game forever and ever and ever. But we're still working out all the details and stuff. But the concept is start a rumor, sling an insult, decapitate your opponent.
So
it's really fun.
Just from that, hearing about so far all the different ways that you are putting the world that you're creating into different buckets, from the board game to the paper doll book to the paintings itself, the mass-produced paintings, and I know from there, are there other avenues that you want to take Cameo Creeps into? I mean, it seems like it has so many different directions it could go.
Right. Well, ultimately, I would love to get, dreaming big here. I would love to get an Amazon or a Netflix miniseries or movie. Puppets or animation would be my jam.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Would be what I would love to see. That's, like I said, that's dreaming big, but
that's the only way to dream.
Well, right. Exactly.
I mean, if you're not going to try and go for the biggest possible thing out there, then why bother? Yeah.
Right. And I know that the just the appeal that I've experienced, with having a celebrity endorsed product, and that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I've never experienced anything that in my artistic career like that. And so it's pretty humbling, and sky's the limit, man.
Right.
Let's just keep going. Let's take the risk and see what happens.
Of course. Now with this, like you mentioned, Toy Fair, does that open other avenues for more people to get to see your world? I mean, aside from doing the conventions that you do, because that's a different beast than like a Gen Con or a pop culture convention. That's a completely industry driven show. For folks that might not know about it, it's all about buyers from stores coming to decide what they want to stock their shelves with.
Right, exactly. Well, my experience was I was very green.
Mm-hmm.
I have never experienced anything like it. I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes, and hopefully be back in 2021. Mm-hmm. Just because it's taken, so they're all about numbers
mm-hmm.
there. So like, oh well, we want to buy this, and like Hot Topic really wanted to put the Creeps in their stores, and
Seems like a perfect fit.
Oh, it would be fantastic.
Yeah.
But my costs were too high.
Mm-hmm.
So they couldn't at wholesale buy X amount of Creeps because it would just cost them too much to. So I've spent the last, year and a half now. It'll be 2 years when I go back, figuring out how to get my costs down.
Mm-hmm.
My production costs of just the Creeps themselves. And I've shaved off a lot. When I first started, my vision was, well, I want to have, the original wood frames. They were routed out of blocks of wood and then stained. Of course, I went with, I couldn't afford the wood per frame, so I did plastic. But I still wanted them routed, so I had custom routers built for this plastic manufacturer, and they routed out all this stuff, and it was costing me, I want to say, after printing and packaging and assembly and all that stuff, it was costing me $11 a piece to make one.
Right.
So whoever backed the first Kickstarter, you guys got like some really expensive Cameo Creeps. But it was all with love, and we all did it. We had to do it. We had to see what would happen, and see if it would even work, But so what I've been able to do is I've been able to shave off $8 a creep right now. So production costs versus what I'm selling them at, and it all factors in. But so it's still too high.
Right. I mean, once you factor in shipping and their markup.
Yeah, I'm still doing everything here in the United States, so
right.
It still costs a little bit of money, but
sure,
I love it. So we'll see what happens. But now, that's the goal. The goal is to get it under $2 per. I can sell them at wholesale for like $4 or $5, and then Hot Topic will be interested. Like before, they were just like way too high.
Sure.
So.
With you mentioned since everything's very character driven, everything you do you think we'll see at any point any RPG stats for any of your characters?
Oh, I would love to. I would love to expand that. Absolutely. I would love to do a book, an RPG book of the world that you could actually play in. I think that's probably something that will develop during side by side or slightly after the board game. The board game I'm really excited about because when we play tested the first edition at Gen Con, this past Gen Con, and it was so exciting to see the world like open up for the players who were play testing with me. Like, and all they got, like, it's so interesting. Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced this or any I'm sure other artists have experienced this too. But like, let's say you you're doing a personal piece of art and you put it out at a convention, and maybe a couple people ignore it, or they kind of, oh, that's cool, that's interesting, and then you get that one person who the light bulb goes
and
off,
their jaw drops, and they're just
and they're like, I have to have this. It was like that.
That's fantastic. Yeah,
and
that's such a good feeling.
They got the concept, they got the idea, and it was like, when that light bulb goes off, man, it is so exciting, and that just makes me want to make more creeps and do more things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, have you taken it into any of like the unpub rooms at any of the shows? Are you? Yeah. Or did you just play test with some friends? Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're not ready yet to go there. I really wanted to see how the mechanics of the rules played out, because there were a couple of questionable areas that we were working on. So I'm working with a designer who's fantastic, and I've been friends with him for quite a while now, and so he's got so many concepts and so many ideas for games, and when he would tell me these things, I'm like, hey, would you ever be interested in making a Cameo Creeps game? And absolutely. So we've been working on it now it'll be a year in February that we've been working on. So the first round of stuff was, okay, well, let's see what are all the pieces we need. So he designed some prototypes, and then I would print them out and trim them and cut them, because everything we want right now, as far as price is concerned, is kind of paper based. So
Sure.
cards and things that you can fold or whatever it might be, right, to play with. But yeah, so it's still developing like this. So this will be the 2.0 version that I just talked about. Mm-hmm. So like the first version was all about blood and guts combat. And one of the things that we discovered was that slinging insults at each other before a duel starts or in the middle of a duel was really fun.
Nice. Yeah, it becomes a social game.
Well, like, this is actually funner than fighting you. I would rather say something silly and, try to hit you with my sword. So we retooled what he did to be, and we added rumors. Mm-hmm. So the creep who the rumors targeted doesn't know what the rumor is because it's a rumor.
Of course. Nice.
So he also knows that he just got hit with, he got -1 honor because the werewolf court, but what that does too is we're thinking as we're getting ready to play test this 2.0 version is that's going to be a reason to go after other creeps in the castle. Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know what the rumor is, but I don't like the fact that you just hit me with 3 honor. I need to recover that, so I'm going to challenge you to a duel.
Now,
so there's all these things. There's all these moving parts that are. It's really interesting to see how they play out.
That's very cool.
Once we're done with that round of playtesting and we prototype the game and we playtest that, I think we'll probably do one more version. Mm-hmm. We're lucky. Probably do one more version, tighten things up, see what's working, see what's not working, and then take it to Gen Con maybe, and then see if we can actually get some people to play it. So
awesome. As far as
early stage, but it's working. So
do you see there being extra world building lore in the game that might not be in other places to try and build more upon the Cameo Creeps universe?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that we discussed in depth actually quite a bit was we're actually not going to release one specific court in the initial game release if we decide to do it. And one of the reasons is because if we happen to hit a stretch goal through a Kickstarter or something, we could add that as a bonus. Sure. And they're the fairies, the fae, are, because they're super weird. They're like not meant to be in this world, but there's a tidbit of information that I just wrote for the fae. The fae in our world are called lights, and they actually consume the dead to create life, and that's why they're hated.
I like
that. They're banished. They were just, destroyed and then banished to this island. So that's kind of the concept. So they would be pretty nasty if they're not nice. I mean, like Cameo Creeps is very PG-13, mm-hmm. And they're probably like
closer to R.
So there's your antagonists and your protagonists, uh-huh. Right? Like, so you have the zombie court, the unhallowed court, and then you have the light, the fairy court, and they're the main headbutters. Like, mm-hmm. There are those two. So you have the queen and you have the king, and they're both button heads the whole time. But you really don't see them until later. So for the game, we also thought about releasing like different types of castles or different types of areas of play in the mm-hmm. world. So you wouldn't necessarily have to just build Crepusculum Castle. You could build, the castle of the Ghost Castle or the I don't know, something. Mm-hmm. You keep going, So.
And those would be great expansions to keep building on as the game grows in popularity and the more people
right.
play it.
Oh. But the other element, too, that I want to touch on is that not only like the game would come with paper creeps to play with, to build your retinue and to use on the board as game pieces. But you would be able to actually play with the creep itself.
Nice.
So these become game pieces.
They would fit on the board, or
that would fit right on the board. They would come with stands, and you'd be able to play with the creeps themselves. So you could pop them off your wall or off your computer desk or whatever, and you could actually play them. So creeps in the future, new lines of creeps that would come out, would come with stat cards. They would come with a new rumor card, a new insult card, and probably a new famous last words card. So you would get all this extra stuff when you bought a creep. So hence trying to get the costs down so I can add some more stuff to it and all that stuff.
Of course. That totally reminds me of like when you'd have a He-Man toy or something where you pulled out and then it had the little mini comic in the back of it.
Oh yeah, totally, man. Yeah. Totally. So there's more to it.
Right.
Like, just to go back real quick to the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about Star Wars. Like, one of the things that blew my mind when I was playing with the toys as a kid. Like, did you ever have the Jabba the Hutt play set?
Yes. Love that.
Okay, so you could pop open Jabba's...
Yeah. Twist the little things on the front?
Yeah, twist the little things and pop them open. And inside there was like a skeleton.
And it was so textured.
Yeah, and it was like textured, and I was like, well, there's more here than just a Jabba playset. There's like a whole dead guy in here. Like there's more stuff going on that I don't know about.
Yep.
And that's the kind of inspiration that inspires, other people, in a very cool way. And it just expands things and expands and expands and expands. And that's the kind of stuff that I want to bring into the Creeps world.
I love that. That's great.
Oh, hey, there's a little thing here that, what? That's not, oh my God, that means, you keep going.
That's great. Oh man, yeah. I can picture like on the back of one of the Creeps there being a secret pull away, like when thinking about finding something in the back of a map or back of an old printed canvas.
Totally. Absolutely, man. That's the other thing too that I find absolutely fascinating about what I've created is that it inspires other people too. When people buy a creep, they see something or it registers with them and they go, I really like that. I want to have that on my wall or next to my computer or whatever. And I've watched people at conventions like hold two creeps up and go, no, I don't know if I like those two together. Oh, but I like these two together. So it's their personal tastes. I'm allowing them to be creative. And I didn't realize that until I started getting them out into the public.
Well, on top of that,
really a cool thing,
I like seeing the picture of people cosplaying as your characters.
Oh my God.
That's got to be completely mind-blowing.
Dude, that was like a once-in-a-lifetime type situation for me. I had been dreaming about somebody cosplaying a character of mine, but not only was it a character that I did, but it was for a character that I did for my own IP.
Right.
That blew my mind.
That's wonderful.
And like I said, just such a humbling experience, and they were so sweet, and they were like, Cameo Creeps are the best, we love them. I'm like, oh man, that's amazing.
I'd have been like, here, have all my stuff. To like anybody that started like cosplaying as something that I created, I was like, here, you can just have it. It's
Take it all. Here's the Creeps crate. Boom.
Well, that's wonderful. What show was that at?
What's that?
What show was that at?
That was Gen Con.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, that was really cool.
So speaking of shows, do you have any shows that people can find Cameo Creeps at coming up?
So I don't have anything for the rest of the year because I'm hustling on Kickstarter stuff for these books. But I'll be at C2E2 in Chicago. I'll be at Emerald City Comic Con in Seattle, and I'll be at Gen Con in Indianapolis so far. That's what I have booked.
Okay, fantastic. I was hoping you'd be at a LuxCon where you debuted them originally, because this will be my first year
You
there.
know, I'm actually considering that for next year.
Okay.
To come back and to share them. Here's all the, show all the books, and because by then I'll have all the books out, and hopefully all the books will be out, and I can share those creeps again with that community. Man, it's funny you bring that up, because real quick, like, being a part of an art community and people like you who want to share this kind of stuff is fuel for creatives, and it drives us and to satisfy that urge to make things.
Absolutely.
And it's AluxCon is one of those places, one of those conventions that it just fuels you for a year.
Awesome. I can't wait to experience it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's fantastic. It's amazing. Your head's going to explode. Like, artgasms will be pouring out of your ears. Just,
awesome.
You're like, I can't keep it all in. I can't keep any more in.
Secondhand Samurai has a request for you, fingers crossed, for Dragon Meat, which I believe is in the UK. And yes, Heather, I look forward to seeing you at AluxCon as well. Heather Hitchman's in the chat.
Oh, hey, Heather.
Yeah, I've heard of Dragon Meat. I think that's over in the UK. Have you done any? Have you
done in the UK or Europe? I've never. I could never afford it.
Yeah, I totally get that. That's what's kept me from going out west so far. Just the sheer expense of shipping everything.
Yeah, it's pricey.
Yep.
I did 5 shows in the last 2 years out west, so it was pretty insane.
Now,
the amount of money I spent.
Yeah. So I know you said Monsterpalooza. You were at Son of Monsterpalooza. Were you at the full Monsterpalooza as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, I was there last year, the year before, and then I did Son of Monsterpalooza last year. I did Designer Con.
How was Designer Con for your stuff? Because I used to customize toys way back in the Wayback Machine, and so Designer Con, I love the art, I love the vinyl toy community, I love all that. So how did your work fare there?
Pretty well, actually. I had no expectations. When you do a show that's new, you can't say, "Oh, this better make me this much money," or whatever. I'm there for the experience. I'm there to see other art. I'm there to meet other artists.
Mm-hmm.
So prioritize that whole monetary thing. But
sure,
I mean, it was good. I wouldn't say I broke even. I wouldn't say I did a ton of money. But I think that if I did it again, I would probably switch some things up.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a lot more pins and patches and stuff, because those were really hot items there.
Sure.
But they did good. I mean, I ended up getting an article from Nerdist out of it, so that was
awesome.
Good, and that put the brand in front of people. It was the same year they released the last Star Wars film, so
nice.
I was up there with, they had a picture of my creeps next to Star Wars, and I was like, what?
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. So I mean, there were benefits to it that were other than that, but it's a really awesome show. It sucked because I was there by myself, so when I could get a break to go run around,
right,
talk to artists and go buy some stuff, it was if I could, I wish I could have had somebody help me so I could just, because I totally would have spent way too much money. And
of course, yeah.
Stuff.
Especially a show like that doesn't go to a lot of the artists probably don't make it to a lot of the shows that you do.
That are, I don't understand. What do you mean?
A lot of the artists at Designer Con don't make it to a lot of the shows that you traditionally do. So it's new stuff to you, yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes, you're right. Yeah, it was a great experience though. All these conventions are just filled with people who are really passionate about the art, about the content, and that's where I want to be.
Yeah, and so
I want to be around people who love it,
absolutely. I do. And that's so many people that are building their own worlds, and that's I met you at conventions, and that's how pretty much everybody that's lined up for the rest of the year for this show are people that I've met through going to conventions and just being friendly.
It's exciting to be an artist right now in a time that allows us to make our own things. Because of, I don't think I could, if I were to come up with Cameo Creeps 20 years ago, I don't think a publisher would even be interested at all. I think that because of Kickstarter and Patreon and sites like Indiegogo and things, creators like us are allowed to put out content we want to see in the world. And that's really awesome. It's a really awesome time.
And there's people out there that prove that they want to see it, because they're the ones that make it happen.
Right. I mean, you look at some of the board game stuff on Kickstarter, it's just like, holy cow, that's a lot of money.
It's a whole lot of money. Yes, it is.
And that's a whole lot of orders they got to fill. Holy cow.
Yes. Hopefully that's where your next Kickstarter will be. So.
Oh, man, that would be amazing.
We've got 5 minutes.
I just want to go my book and I'll be happy. But.
Awesome. We've got just a couple minutes left. Do you have any advice for people that are creating their own world or doing their own thing that you'd like to give to them before we talk a little bit more about where they can find all of your wonderful things?
Cool. So if I were to say, give a good piece of advice for young creators, is that keep at it. A good idea, might sit in your sketchbook for a while or in your notebook for a while before it can develop, but keep at it. It's so important to move forward, and then tweak it. Oh, I didn't like this part, I'll change it. Oh, now I like it, so it's be open to developing.
That sounds great. So, Chris, where can everybody find you on all of the places?
Okay, so I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Chris Seaman Art. I am on Facebook at Chris Seaman Art as well. I am my personal website is chrisseamanart.com, and Cameo Creeps can be found at cameocreeps.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris, so much for being a part of today's very first episode of Artists of World Building. This is going to be a bi-weekly show, so 2 weeks from now we'll have another artist guest, and we already have everything lined up almost through the end of the year, so get ready for lots of fun conversations where we just talk and chat about all things art and world building. Be sure to hit me up if you have any questions or suggestions or any artists that you'd like to see on Twitter at @TheBrianColin, and that's it. Thank you, everybody, for chiming in, and you're welcome, Sudian, for the stream, and we hope to see you guys again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Chris. Bye.